Hi friends, welcome to spring. This is the season of new life and new chances and beginning again. It's a time where we get to enjoy the fresh air, open up the windows, let the sunlight in. In the springtime, I find myself called to nature, this internal desire to immerse myself in the outdoors and experience the magic that's happening in the world around us. Whether it's the buds forming on the trees that will eventually take shape into leaves, or the flowers bursting forth from the ground, sharing their beautiful blooms with us. It is the scent of the rain falling onto the grass and reviving the nature of the world. And we get to be a part of this. We get to experience this. And if we pay attention, we can see the magic. I am so excited to share a video with you giving you recommendations for things you can do to savor this spring season. I have fallen in love with this idea of romanticizing our lives, of taking some smaller things that we can do and amping them up to make them something really almost glamorous and fantasy-like. Even though the activities that we are participating in might not be that extravagant. Most of the videos that I've watched that have talked about romanticizing life have been very much geared towards single women or married women who don't have kids. And while watching these videos and feeling so inspired to bring some of that into my own life, I felt slightly discouraged because as a mom to 2 young kids, it's really hard to do a lot of those things without neglecting my duty as a parent. So I set to work coming up with lots of different ideas for how this type of lifestyle, this romanticizing life, taking part in the small things but making them feel like big things, how can we do that with our families? How can we bring this same sense of really just immersing ourselves into these wonderful moments with our kids as well? And today, that is what I'm here to share with you. We are going to be talking about 4 different categories of things that we can do in the season to really savor and romanticize it with our families. Many of these ideas are translatable into other family makeups as well. So if you are a single person or if you are married and don't have kids, these ideas are going to work for you too. Over the next 4 videos that you'll see coming onto my channel, we are going to deep dive into recommendations for books, movies, games, and activities that you can do with your family to romanticize this season. Before we get started, you may want to pause this video and grab yourself a notepad and a pen so you can jot down any of the ideas that come up in this video that resonate with you. So go ahead and grab yourself that, maybe a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and let's get into my recommendations for the spring for families. Let's talk about books first. Today I have 10 book recommendations for you, and I'm going to divide them into 2 different categories. I have 5 books that are read aloud books. So these are books that you as the parent may want to read out loud to your children at bedtime or after dinner, or these are also books that are going to be really great to read on your own as well, since they're meant for somewhat older readers, but they are still family friendly. The second set of 5 books are picture books. Some of these are also great for adults to read, but let's start with those read aloud books first. My first book recommendation for today is by Ash, Oak, and Thorn by Melissa Harrison. This book is so darn cute. It is about three little tiny people called hidden folk who live in an old ash tree in the backyard of a suburban house. The hidden folk have been around for centuries, since the time of dinosaurs and before, and they are the protectors of nature. They each have their own little area in the great outdoors that they call their own, and they protect and they take care of it. But with the coming of the mortals into the wild world, the mortals have taken over much of their job, and they find that the hidden folk are dwindling. This book follows three of those hidden folk named Moss, Burnett, and Cumulus as they traverse around the wild world to find out why they are beginning to disappear and if they can find a way to stop it. The reason why I love this book is Melissa does such a beautiful job of describing nature while also reminding us of the part that we have to play in taking care of the world around us. The centuries-long friendship between the three friends is so raw and real. It shows us how much we need our friends and then also how we can really be supportive of each other. It really feels like a Tolkien book that's full of mystery and adventure, but it's written in a way that feels a bit more approachable to young listeners. Because the descriptions are so thorough, you can really see in your mind's eye the story that Melissa is weaving. It also takes place in the modern world, so you can relate some of those things back to what your children may have already seen in their lives. I love this book for reading to children because it helps to build a curiosity about the outside world and about nature. And I think that's such a special treat when it comes to reading a book like this. My next book recommendation is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. If you have not read this book before or seen any of the screen adaptations of this book, then here is a little synopsis about what Anne of Green Gables is all about. Anne Shirley is an 11-year-old orphan who is sent somewhat accidentally to the Cuthberts, Marilla and Matthew, who are brother and sister. The Cuthberts needed some help in working their farm, so they're hoping to adopt an orphan boy who can come and aid them. When Anne Shirley shows up, they are quite surprised since Anne is not a boy, and she quickly captures their heart. This book follows Anne as she settles into her home in Green Gables and into her new family. It's a book about hopes and dreams, friendship, and learning to love yourself for who you are and your own unique characteristics. I love this book because it's about a young girl, which makes it really relatable for many of your young listeners. I love that it really focuses on family and friendship and forgiveness and love and courage and bravery and all of these really fantastic attributes for an individual, but also for a book in and of itself. It doesn't shy away from some of the harder topics, but it does so in a way that feels not so traumatic to those who are reading it. So it feels like a real story. After watching Anne with an E, I instantly fell in love with the story of Anne Shirley, and it made me want to read the book. I can't remember if I ever read Anne of Green Gables as a child. I don't really recall it, but this is a book that I have been dying to read in the last couple of years. I purchased it this year, and I am actually going to be reading this one to my kids after we finish by Ash, Oak, and Thorn. I can't wait. I really can't wait because I love that this book is about a young girl who is coming of age, who is learning to love herself for who she is, who really just immerses herself in nature and loves fiercely her family and her friends. My next book recommendation in my read alouds category is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. This book follows three friends, Mole, Rat, and Badger as they try to help their fourth friend, Mr. Toad, stay out of trouble. You see, Mr. Toad is the kind of character who is not only wealthy, but also gets fixated on certain things, almost to the point of obsession. And his latest obsession is motor cars. Mr. Toad finds himself in trouble as he tries to drive motor cars and drives too fast and all of these other types of things, and his three friends, Mole, Rat, and Badger, are trying to protect him from himself. This is a story that I also have not read personally yet, but I also purchased this and I have this as our third spring read for this current year. I bought this book to read to my kids because I love the idea of reading some of the older classic books that were written for children's ears. This book was originally written in 1908, so it is quite old, but has aged fairly well. It's got talking animals in it and adventure and laughter, and those three things are a recipe for success when it comes to reading aloud books to my children. I feel that the talking animals and the silly antics that they participate in give this book a whimsical feel, and that's going to help hold my kids' attention a little bit more as I'm reading this aloud. But don't let that stop you from reading this for yourself as well if you don't have kids. I also think that this is a very cute, it feels very spring, whimsical book that can be read by adults as well. My next read aloud recommendation is quite the doozy, but definitely one worth reading. This is The Complete Tales of Winnie-the-Pooh by A.A. Milne. Again, this was a book that was written, intended to be read to children, but ages very well for adults too. If you don't know anything about Winnie-the-Pooh, these stories follow a silly old teddy bear who has come to life and lives in the 100-acre wood with his other animal friends, including Piglet and Eeyore, Tigger and Rabbit, and so many more characters. It shows their relationship with their human boy named Christopher Robin and teaches so many wonderful life lessons about friendship and experiencing nature and loving others and letting go. The stories are timeless and they're appropriate for young and old readers. I love that this book is a reminder that we can still partake, we can still see the magic in the world around us and through the relationships that we have with those in our lives. This book is actually a collection of stories, right? So The Complete Tales. So it comes with a load of different stories within the book itself. I would say that each story is roughly 20 pages long and is filled with illustrations. So that can also help you engage your child's attention as well. My final recommendation for a read aloud book is the Beatrix Potter Treasury. This is a book that includes stories following all kinds of Beatrix's characters, including Peter Rabbit, but also Benjamin Bunny and Tom Kitten, and so many other animal characters. Each story is fairly short and filled with the most beautiful illustrations. Here's an example where you can see those there. It makes them a little bit easier to read to children because you have the images to help capture their attention, and also the stories are shorter, so you don't need that attention for quite as long as some of these other books we've talked about. The stories generally have some kind of moral at the end of the story, and they're just sweet and perfect for reading to both children and adults alike. Next, let's move on to my 5 picture book recommendations for the springtime. The first one here is this little tiny book called Flower Fairies of the Spring. This book is actually filled with poetry, so little poems, little songs that are written to the different flowers or the different little fairies that would be protectors of these flowers. The pages come illustrated on one side with the little poem on the other side. I love the idea of having this one out displayed and letting your kids look through it, or setting up a fairy garden and planting specific flowers in your fairy garden that relate to the fairies in this book, or picking one poem and reading it over breakfast each morning. I think it's a great introduction to poetry for kids, and it also just really helps to get into that feeling of the magic of the spring season. Also, these illustrations are just so pretty. Like, here we go, here's another one. I really love this book, and I'm excited to see my kids leaf through this as I have this out during the spring season. My next picture book recommendation is A Blessing for Spring's Child by Peter Hinckley. This book is really intended as a gift or a book to be read to a child that is born in spring, and carries through its pages a blessing for that child. But I think that it can actually be a book that's good for a child not born in spring too, because it just is filled with the most beautiful illustrations, sharing scenes of the spring. And as you read through the blessing included inside, it just really focuses on so many different components of the spring, like robins and a willow tree and the wind, and all of these different aspects of the spring that if you really pay attention, you can see them in your own backyard. Monarch butterflies. I mean, it is just beautiful. But if you also happen to know a child who is born in spring, or who is going to be born in spring, this I think is such a beautiful book that could be given to that child as a gift. I in fact have a baby niece who is going to be born here in just a couple of weeks. And so this is a book that I am going to give to my sister to read and to have as a little cherished book for our new niece. My next picture book recommendation is We Are the Gardeners by Joanna Gaines and kids. This book is so pretty on the inside, and also talks all about what it means to be a gardener and to take care of plants. I love that the story follows the Gaines children as they acquire their very first house plant and learn how overwatering can actually kill your plant. And in making mistakes, they learn with each new plant how to be a gardener and how to take care of the nature around them. I love that this book shows different portions of how to take care of plants. So if you or your children are hoping to plant a garden this coming spring or summer, this could be a fantastic way to approach some of the topics of how we care for plants, and to do that in a very kid-friendly kind of way. Like, the language in this is just really suitable for young learners. One of the big messages in this book that I really love is the concept of not giving up when you fail. There are a couple of instances where either plants die or things happen and the garden is ruined. And when given the choice between giving up or trying again, they try again and they learn from their mistakes. And I think that's such a valuable lesson for us to learn, not just about gardening, but about life in general. So great message, great illustrations. Love this book. Definitely recommend it. The final two picture books that I will recommend today are both actually graphic novels, which means that there's a bit more story to them than your typical picture book, and they follow the flow of a graphic novel or a manga or somewhat of a comic book. So you read them based on the little pictures that are contained in the pages. This first graphic novel is called The Flower Garden by Renee Carilla. It is about two little girls, Anna and Tess, who are planting a flower garden in order to help the bees. They've learned recently that bees are necessary for helping flowers to grow and helping plants to grow, and they want to help the bees out. But as they're planting the garden and fall asleep in the garden that they've planted, waiting for the flowers to bloom, something happens and they end up shrunken down to a miniature little size in their garden. And then they go on a little bit of an adventure and learn some lessons along the way. I love the vibrant colors of this book. The illustrations are just beautiful. Another thing that I love about this book is that it's a super quick read and a very nice introduction into graphic novels for kids. So showing them how to read the flow of how the story goes from picture to picture and helping you to imagine what might come next. There's also some lessons to be learned about paying attention to the needs of our friends, showing empathy, showing compassion. And I think that that's also a moral or a message that's really good for young children as well. My final book recommendation for today is The Tea Society by Kay O'Neill. This story follows a young daughter of a blacksmith named Greta, who one day, as she is in the market, comes across a tea dragon that's being threatened by some other animals. She saves the tea dragon, and when she returns it to its owner, the owner offers to teach her all there is to know about caring for and keeping tea dragons, which is a dying art and a dying knowledge in their world. Greta, who is also learning the slow and somewhat dying art of blacksmithing, decides that she wants to go and learn more about these tea dragons. She makes new friends and in the process learns the importance of carrying on the traditions and the knowledge of our family, and especially when those trades are things that are disappearing from the world. I love this book because it is a really good marriage between a manga and a graphic novel. It reads like a graphic novel. It feels kind of like a manga. It's again another great introduction into that style of writing, that style of book for young readers or for adults if you've never read a graphic novel before. The art in this book is again just beautiful, and it makes me feel like spring, even though the book itself goes through all 4 seasons of the year. This is a series of books, so I believe there are 2 more that you can get, so the next 2 stories, and there are also some games and other things that are made around the Tea Dragon Society storyline. My favorite part of the book is actually in the very back of the book. There is the Tea Dragon Society Handbook, where you get to learn more about the tea dragons and information on what a tea dragon is and where they came from and how to care for them and all these really fun facts about these mythical creatures. And then it follows with giving us some information about 8 different tea dragons. We get to learn a little bit about the personalities of the different dragons. What I love about the dragons themselves is they are named after actual tea. So we have the Jasmine tea dragon and the Rubio's tea dragon and the chamomile and ginseng and Earl Grey and hibiscus, ginger, and peppermint. So they're named for the teas, and a lot of their personality traits come from the actual taste of the teas as well. I think that's such a cute way to create characterization of the characters in your story. One heads up I do want to give you on this book is there are some very, very slight undertones of an LGBTQ+ theme in the book, so just to know that ahead of time, although I found that it was added in very tastefully into this book. So definitely one that I would recommend, if not just for the art. The story is actually really quite sweet as well. Well, friends, that is it for my book recommendations for the spring. I hope that this video was inspirational for you, that it gives you some ideas of books that you might want to add to your TBR list this season, and ones that maybe you would be interested in reading to your kids to really savor the spring together. If you did find this video inspirational, leave me a thumbs up on this video and maybe a flower emoji in the comments down below. While you're there, if you have any recommendations for books to read that really hone in on those spring vibes, leave those in the comment section so we can continue to build on this list and come up with some really great ideas for books that we can read either to our children or for our own personal enjoyment as well. This video is the first in a series of 4 videos that you are going to be seeing about spring recommendations. In the next video, we're going to be talking about movies and TV shows that I think are perfect to watch with your family that really celebrate the season of spring. So keep an eye out for that video coming very, very soon. In the meantime, I hope that you are enjoying the start to the spring season, and I hope to hear that maybe you give one of these books a try. Until next time, friends, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, friends.